Percent of increase or decrease. Here's an increase problem. A house cost $25,000 in 1965. Today it's worth $215,000. By what percent has the value increased? Clearly the amounts are getting larger. The ratio we're looking for today is how much of a change has there been divided by the original amount. Notice we don't divide by the larger amount or the smaller amount, it's always the original amount because we want to compare to the historical change since the original amount. By change, what I mean is let's subtract these two numbers and find out how much change has occurred in dollars. So over time since 1965, this house has increased in value $190,000. But that's not the percent change. That's the change. So we found this amount out. Now what we do is take that amount and divide it by the original amount. So as you can see, when the original amount is the smaller amount, we're going to get a very large percentage. Now this is going to give us a ratio that's a decimal amount. We want to multiply that by 100 to change it to a percent, which is what we're looking for. So keep that in mind. Now that this is a fraction in a multiplication problem, you can do some reducing before you divide, and then go ahead and divide 190 divided by 25 times 100, and the final answer is going to be 760%. Wow, that's huge. But as you can see, the house has increased substantially. In fact, almost 8 times the original value. That's percent increase. Here's another one. Bon Bon trains on the agility course for 7 hours weekly. You can see how hard she's working there. Before the national competition, her trainer wants to increase her work by 23%. How many hours per week will Bon Bon be training then? Well, let's think about what this problem is saying. She's training 7 hours and her trainer wants to add more time to that. And the amount added is going to be 23% of 7 hours. There's a couple ways to calculate this. You could do 7 plus and calculate this. This is like 0.23 times 7, and that is 1.61 hours. So altogether, her training schedule needs to be beefed up to 8.61 hours altogether per week. So that's the final answer. Now, like I said, there's more than one way to solve this problem. Another way is to think of this. Her original 7 hours represents 100% of her current training schedule, and we want to add 23% more. So altogether, that's 123% of her current training schedule, which is 7 hours. So think of 123% as a rate that you're going to multiply by the current schedule. You need to change that to a decimal before we multiply, so that's like 1.23 times 7. And in one multiplication step, you get the final answer. That's not really fewer steps, it's just that adding 100% to 23% is so simple to do in your head, it hardly seems like you did addition. But basically, we did addition first, and then we did multiplication. Whereas in the other method, we do multiplication right here, and then we add. Let's try that new method on a decrease problem. Okay, after a 3% decrease in shoe sales, about 2.4 billion pairs of shoes were sold in the United States last year. How many pairs were sold the previous year? Okay, here's a really important word right here, after. So after the decrease, this is how many shoe sales occurred. That means this is not the original amount, this is the final amount, and the original amount is what we are looking for. So that is missing. Here's what I want you to think of. The original amount is 100% of the shoes. The new amount is 3% less. So the new amount represents 97% of the original amount, which is our x because it's missing. So we can write an equation that says that. 97% of x looks like this. and 97% of the original amount results in 2.4 billion pairs of shoes. And now to solve, we need to divide by 0.97. Okay, our final answer is 2,474,226,804 pairs of shoes. And remember, this is the previous year, so this is the original amount, and it is a bigger amount than after the decrease, which makes sense. So the shortcut for a decrease is to take your 100% and subtract the amount of the decrease if you know the percent, and then use that 97% as a rate to multiply by whether you know the original amount or not. You multiply that by the original amount, and that results in the final amount. All right, let's look at this problem. Nike's stock price has dropped from $160 a share to $115 per share this past month. In the same time, Adidas had its stock price rise from $60 per share to $78 per share. Which company experienced the larger percent of change? Here's what you need to know about this phrase. It's not asking whether one of them increased more than the other one or putting an increase at a higher value than a decrease. It's more like absolute value. It just wants to know who changed more. So it doesn't matter whether it was an increase or a decrease. What we're looking for is really an absolute value of the amount of change and trying to find out which change is bigger compared to its original price. So let's find the percent of change for each and compare them. In the first one, for Nike, remember for these problems we need to find the amount of change by subtracting and then divide that by the original amount. Then we multiply by 100 to change it to a percent. That's the formula we're going to use for both. So for Nike, we're going to subtract 160 minus 115, divide that by 160 because that's the original amount, and multiply by 100. That results in 45 out of 160 times 100, which is a decrease of 28.125%. Now the decrease can either be shown with a negative, as I did, or another way is to simply use the word decrease, 28.125% decrease. Either way is fine. Just make sure that you express whether something is an increase or a decrease in some way. So the decrease can either be a word or a negative symbol. Now let's try Adidas. Since their price went from 60 to 78, we need to subtract those two numbers and divide by the original number, which was 60, before multiplying by 100. So that changes to 18 over 60 times 100. And that comes out to be 30% exactly. Now remember, it doesn't really matter for this problem whether it's an increase or a decrease, but it is important to label your data accurately. So I'm going to label them increase and decrease, and then I'm going to compare the actual numbers. What's bigger, 28 or 30? 30 is a bigger change, and so the answer is Adidas. Okay, let's look at some reminders. Remember that the formula we're using here is that percent change equals the difference between the two amounts divided by the original amount. No matter whether the original amount is larger or smaller, you always compare it to where it started out. Then multiply by 100 to make it into a percent. We show decrease with either a negative symbol or the word decrease following the percent. We show increase with the word increase following the percent. And remember that an increase can be calculated by using 100% plus the percent of increase. And then you can multiply that 123% or 150% as a decimal times the original amount. The same with decreases, except that you take 100% and subtract the amount of the decrease, and then multiply that rate, 98% or 52%, you multiply by the original amount to find the new amount after the decrease. There are many problems like this in your homework, and I hope you're ready to take them on now.